It was so awful. Like, I so badly wanted it to be good, but it was awful, and I just have no other words for it. In general, Gladiator 2 was just a mess. Like, I went into this film, I had seen the first one, loved it, made it to my top 4. I was like, yes, like, the trailer looks awesome, feels a little too modern, you know, but whatever, you know, the first movie was made in 2000 and this one's made in 2024, you know. Things are gonna be different. It was beyond just being modern. It was just bad filmmaking. This is like no shade to Ridley Scott, but like, what was that? Like, why did we need a sequel when the first one was already so good? The first of many problems was the characters. Basically, I feel like none of the characters were three-dimensional. I felt no connection with them. Like, yeah, you can wave hot people in our face to like make us go see the movies, but that's not gonna make me feel connected to them. So Lucius, played by Paul Mescal, he was awful. I'm sorry. What was that character? Like, Paul Mescal is a good actor. I know this. I've seen him in other things. The character was just so poorly written. He had no personality. Zero. Other than, like, revenge. But it wasn't even, like, revenge that I cared about. Which I'll get into that later. This video will have spoilers, so, like, But one of my biggest problems was how Lucius's character switched up on how he thought about his mother. He was like, oh my god, no, I hate you. I'm never gonna speak to you again because you abandoned me. And then, like, 20 minutes later in the movie, he's like, no, I love you, mama. And I'm like, so high. So where was the story arc? Where was the arc for him? Zero. Next is Lucilla, who is Lucius's mom in the first movie. There was no added depth to her this film. Like, she was the same character from the first movie, but there was just nothing extra. And I'm like, if we're making a movie so many years after, there should be a little extra in there, you know? Next character, General Acacius. Okay. He was more entertaining to watch than the main character. And when that happens, that's a problem. I love Pedro Pascal, just like everyone does. But his character was just more watchable than Lucius's. I felt zero connection to Lucius, and like comparing him to the first film and comparing him to Maximus, who I was so invested in this story, it was like a stab in the heart. I was like, I just don't care. And like, honestly, justice for General Acacius. He had more depth than the main character, and I wish he had lived longer in the film. His death was also like, screenwriting, you know? And then my next problem is the twin emperors. I understand the want to do comedic relief, I guess, but I feel like the emperors in Rome are supposed to be scary, and they just weren't that. Like, they did the whole thumbs down thing. I wasn't scared. I was like, okay, you do that. But I mean, in the first movie, Commodus, Joaquin Phoenix was incredible. He was horrifying. I mean, like, I was like, how can you be so power hungry that you kill your own father and like all this stuff? And like, the twin emperors just didn't live up to that. Characters were a flop. The only really good character in the film was Macrinus, who was played by Denzel Washington. He was the only character I actually felt like connection to, despite the fact that he was a villain in the end. He was really the only character who I was interested in, like, fully, because he was more developed. Like, he had his whole, like, Brutus arc, and it was really good. But that was, like, the only part of the movie. Like, I should not be enjoying the villain's character depth more than the main characters, you know? Alright, so the next problem was nostalgia. I feel like Gladiator 2 in general was very reliant on nostalgia from the first film. They really wanted us to like think back to the first film, be connected to it, think about Maximus, and like I understand that this is a continuation of the story, but at the end of the day, Maximus is dead. We're not getting more of his character. We're getting more of his son, who we don't actually really care about, because like I said, the writing was just not fleshed out enough. And there was way too much awkwardness trying to recreate the, like, violence and, I don't know, like, almost the strength of the first film. Like, the scene where Lucius, before the final battle, where he gets all the gladiators to, like, rebel and stuff, it feels lacking in the emotion, in what's really happening, that they're rebelling against their slavers. Like, it's missing something. And, like, I don't know, I can't even place my finger on it, but some of the writing felt so forced to be, like, heroic and stuff. But in the first Gladiator, it felt so natural. The predictableness of this film was a big problem. This section is gonna have big spoilers, so just watch out for that. It was just the first 20 minutes of the film, I was like, they showed the first 20 seconds and I was like, I know exactly what's gonna happen right now. Yep, I know exactly what's gonna happen. They showed, like, Lucius and his wife. Don't even remember her name, out the window. No idea. They gave us the, like, dead wife, pretty shots of her, and, like, oh, he loves her, but, like, we didn't get any story. We didn't get any emotional depth. I felt zero connection, or I felt zero empathy towards the relationship because it just wasn't fleshed out. Like, if she dies within the first 5 minutes of the movie, at least make the effort to make me care about her. There was just genuinely a lack of empathy for her character that I had. And I feel like I'm definitely not the only one. I mean, she died and, like, he was crying and I was like, okay, like, it sounds awful, but, like, they didn't give us anything to feel emotionally connected to. And I feel like that's what was so great about the first Gladiator, is that Maximus's wife and son, like, yes, we didn't objectively see them that much, but they survived half the film. So when they were brutally murdered, it struck our hearts. And, like, we saw these scenes of Maximus with his wife and his kids, and he talked about them, and it's like, we didn't get that in this film. Lucius, like, mourned his wife for 2 seconds and then, like, was on a revenge path but didn't actually talk about his wife. Like, he wasn't like, emotionally connected. He wasn't talking about, like, the memories with his wife and all this stuff. That wasn't there. But in the first film, it was, and that's why it was so monstrous how Maximus's wife and son were killed. Like, that's why it hit so hard. I don't know. It was just very disappointing in the predictability, especially in the beginning of a film when you're supposed to be setting up for me and among other audience members to be into it, to be excited about it. My last complaint is continuity. I didn't capture it in any other part of the film, but on my first watch when I was in the theater, something really stuck out to me, and I genuinely, like, almost walked out of the theater because I was like, this is ridiculous. Not just because of that, but because of all the other complaints of the film that I had. But the continuity. So there's this is spoilers, by the way. There's a scene where Lucius is fighting monkeys in an arena. It's, like, before he gets to the Rome Colosseum. It's in a smaller arena, like what Maximus did in the first film. So he's fighting the monkeys, the baboons, and they're violent, whatever. Doesn't seem necessarily realistic, doesn't matter. He, like, bites one of the monkey's necks and, like, has blood dripping down his face, okay? Like, this is a lot of blood on his face. And then in the next shot, it's like a slow-mo of him walking, and there's no blood. It's like dry sand. And I'm like, why? Like, someone didn't do their continuity job. Someone didn't check the script. The editor might have fucked up, or the director didn't notice in the edits, and I don't know. Obviously, everyone makes mistakes, even large films like this. But this was such an obvious mistake where I was like, guys, come on, like, let's put in a little more effort than that, because it was so glaring. I mean, it was like a ton of blood on his face. You can't just wipe that off. And if you are gonna wipe it off, at least make it look like it's wiped. Don't just get rid of it in the next shot. It's ridiculous. at the end of the day, I'm not saying that, like, I don't appreciate the art, because every film has hundreds and thousands of people putting in the effort to make the film. This is just simply my thoughts on how this film fell short, and maybe we shouldn't have made it. And I did hear rumors that Ridley Scott might make a third one, and I'm like, it's just not worth it, because when you make a film as famous as Gladiator, at that point, I don't think it's worth making a second film 25 years later. It's just not worth it, and especially when it's a film like this, where it just doesn't live up to the first one, too reliant on me remembering the first one. Like, I don't know, it felt hollow. It felt like a money grab. And it's unfortunate, because I really, really wanted to enjoy this film. So that is why Gladiator 2 sucked.